All right, good evening, everyone. I am the Mad Computer Scientist, and we are just going to make sure everything is running on my end like it should be. Give me a few seconds, and then we'll get into the video. All right. Oh. All right, we need to cancel that. And I was not on YouTube like I thought I was. Give me a second here. You on YouTube? And we'll see if I'm getting sound through. Okay, we are getting sound through. That is good. Now we need to do a couple more things here just to make sure everything is running the way I would like it to be. And we also need to make sure my sound is going through my headphones. All right, now we need to add the video and make sure it has sound. Okay, we should be good to go. Let us see. All right, let's play a few seconds of the video.
This is an argument for the existence of God. That if
All right, we played a few seconds of the video, and let's see if it's going to come through.
This is an argument.
All right, everything is good. Sorry about making you go through all of that. Welcome to Faulty Logic Fridays. I am the Mad Computer Scientist. On this channel, I like to talk about math, computer science, and technology topics that are of interest to me. Every Friday night, we do something a little different, let our hair down a little bit, and try to have a little fun with videos we think are using faulty logic. Now, tonight's video was a bit rushed. I was thinking about taking it off like I normally do the first Friday of every month, especially since I have the 128 subscriber stream coming up Monday, but I thought we would stick with the content we've been doing just to stay on a regular schedule. Now, we are going to be watching something that appears to be an actual show on the Trinity Broadcasting Network, featuring Kirk Cameron. And for those of you who don't know, Kirk Cameron was the star of the 80s sitcom Growing Pains. While he was on the sitcom, he had a conversion to evangelical Christianity. After Growing Pains ended, he has acted in a variety of Christian movies, and of course, his most famous thing since leaving Growing Pains was helping Ray Cameron? That was a mistake on my end. Helping Ray Comfort spread false information by suggesting evolution suggested that the crocoduck would be a valid endpoint for evolution. Now, there are plenty of people who have mocked the crocoduck, and of course, the YouTuber Potholer54 even gives out an annual Golden Crocoduck Award, and of course, Kirk Cameron, I believe, has been a winner, although someone who has followed those awards since their inception could correct me in the comments down below. So tonight, he says that the Bible and DNA are both coded. Let's find out what he means by that.
If I were still an atheist, this one line of evidence would convince me that God exists. And here's what it is. Virtually every scientist in the world now believes the universe began at some point in the past.
No, they don't actually. But this is a little bit beyond me, so feel free to fact check me on this one and be sure to look it up. But there is no clear idea of when or if the universe began. There is, however, an idea that our current instantiation of space-time began at the Big Bang. The problem is we don't know what, if anything, existed before the Big Bang, and scientists are still working on that. So once again, we have a situation where scientists are more than happy to say, I don't know.
In fact,
that the universe is not eternal.
It's not eternal. It has not always existed. Alexander Volinkin, the head of the Cosmology Institute at Tufts University, said the proof is now in place that the universe had a beginning.
How much do you want to bet that was a quote mine?
Well, that makes a strong argument for God, because whatever begins to exist has a cause.
Oh, goody. I was hoping we'd get to the first premise of the Kalam Cosmological. Please don't tell me you're going to recycle it here, because William Lane Craig actually does a much better job of it. Also, let's see who is watching. Give me a second here and we will welcome people. Well, not nearly as many as the YouTube count suggests.
Now know the universe began to exist. Therefore, there must be a cause behind the universe. Well, then you ask the question, what kind of a cause can bring a universe into existence? It must be transcendent because it existed apart from the creation. It must be timeless or eternal because it existed before physical time came into being. It must be immaterial or spirit because it existed before the physical world was created. Must be powerful given the immensity of the creation event. Must be smart given the precision of the creation event. Must be caring because he created such a wonderful habitat for us to exist in. Must be personal because he had to make the decision to create. And then the scientific principle of Occam's razor tells us there would be just one creator.
Okay, first off, let's address the last comment there first. Occam's razor is not a scientific principle. Occam's razor is a philosophical principle that says we shouldn't needlessly multiply entities, and that the simplest explanation that fits the facts is most likely the correct one. Note that the most likely there doesn't mean it's always the correct one. Secondly, what we have here, and I'm glad we've actually chosen this video because we have a rather classic, easy to spot logical fallacy being used here. Colloquialist fallacy is known as the God of the Gaps, but God of the Gaps is essentially an argument from ignorance. Now, a standard disclaimer here, I'm not saying God exists or not, you're still free to believe, but the problem here is he's saying he doesn't know how this happened, therefore God must have done it. There are plenty of religious Christians who believe in science who say, we don't know, and that means we don't know. They may believe God set the events in motion, but they don't say, God definitely did it, and that's the end of all curiosity.
You know what the most repeated phrase in the Bible?
Oh, that's not an ad. I seriously thought that was. And my gosh, what is wrong with her makeup? Oh, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. That's not makeup. Those are tattoos.
Bible is. The reoccurring message is repeated 365 times. Watch this.
Great, you've done an animation. How does that prove that the phrase occurs 365 times? Couldn't you have at least just done a search on the text of the entire Bible? Or maybe done some basic data science and see how many times that particular phrase or variations of it, depending on whether or not you change capitalization or not, occur in the Bible. Or maybe expect more people who know how to code to actually do stuff like this when most of us just aren't interested. Well, if I wanted to fall asleep, we have something perfect here.
But let me just give you one example.
Oh, thank goodness that is over. And I don't believe the first 5 books in the Bible are called the Torah. I believe they're called the Pentateuch.
Give you a flavor of this. This is Genesis chapter 1 in Hebrew. Now, I want to...
However, let's fact check myself because I'm not entirely sure. Give me a few seconds here and we'll find out. What are the first 5 books in the Bible called? All right, Google came up with the auto-completion. All right, so yes, they are called the Pentateuch. Is there any more information here? And by tradition, Moses is considered to be the author of those books.
Remind you that Hebrew goes from right to left. Also, the word Torah in Hebrew is spelled with 4 letters. A ta, which is roughly equivalent to our T, an O, a resh, a hey.
I thought a tau was equivalent to 6.28 approximately. Oh, wait, that's the Greek letter.
4 letters. If you go to the first how in the book of Genesis, and that's the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet, it happens, and you count 40.
Okay, it looks like I was kind of right about what was going to go on here, or at least would have been if I finished the description. We are in fact going to do some numerology and essentially Bible code nonsense. I forget when the Bible Code was published. I think it was in the 90s. Give me a few seconds here, and I'll check that for you as well. All right, when was it published? All right, the Bible Code was published in 1997.
49 letters, you come to a vav. You count 49 more letters, and you come to a resh, which is sort of like our R. And you count 49 more letters, you come to a hey.
And then you do trial division to find the prime factorization of those Hebrew letters.
So that those 4 letters spelled Torah. Now I need to remind
Wait, is that the proper transliteration of Torah in English?
you that all languages flow towards Jerusalem. Did you know that? All nations east of Jerusalem.
All languages flow toward Jerusalem? Wait, really? How do languages flow? Do you mean they can be traced back there? Because even according to your own mythology, they should be traced back to the Tower of Babel.
Jerusalem go from right to left. All nations.
Wait, what? I don't even... Okay, we have a known non sequitur.
West of Jerusalem go from left to right. All languages flow towards Jerusalem. I don't know what you're going to do with that piece of information.
Nothing, because it's not even correct. Different versions of Greek could go both ways depending on what period you're talking about. It's just by convention that we go from left to right in English.
But I think it's interesting. Now, you can follow this without knowing Hebrew, probably, but you say, now why 49 was the square of 7? Okay, that's fine.
Congratulations! You can do the square root of 7 correctly.
That's not too surprising, but just a coincidence, of course. Or is it? Now, you could argue, well, that's just an accident of the frequency of letters and so forth. It's kind of rare, but interesting. Except what happens is when you go to the book of Exodus, you go to the first Tau, count 49 letters.
Oh, I was so afraid we wouldn't have any apophenia tonight.
You get a vav. 49 letters, you get a resh. 49 letters, and you get a hey. Same thing happens.
Yes, but I literally could go through the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and find meaningless patterns. They're just going to occur in any large enough text.
What's the probability of that? Whatever the first probability is, it's that squared. Okay? So it's very unlikely. Genesis, Exodus, you go to Leviticus, and it doesn't happen. And when it doesn't, it's almost...
I don't think his combinatorics are right, but I would have to work it out.
Feel a sigh of relief, huh? But when you go to Numbers, the same thing happens backwards. You take the first hey, the first resh, the first vav, the first tau, you get Torah spelled backwards. Now that's weird. If nothing else, I don't know how they found this out. They must have had time on their hands, you know. They didn't have computers. You know, this was... You go to Deuteronomy.
You mean someone looking for a pattern found a pattern? I'm shocked.
You have essentially the same equivalent thing happens. And now you're puzzled because you've got it forward, forward, backward, backward. You can't resist going back to Leviticus and looking at Leviticus more closely.
Why? Why would this make us go back to Leviticus to look at Leviticus more closely?
We have 49 and 7 squared letter sequences. Torah, Torah, forward in Genesis, Exodus.
And if we have one more Torah, we have an excellent World War II movie.
Backwards in Numbers and Deuteronomy. Well, if you look at Leviticus, you discover that every 7th letter spells the unpronounceable name of God. Often rendered Jehovah or Yahweh, expressed as Adonai among the Hebrews. They won't pronounce that name. They'll use the word Lord instead. Well, now we stand back.
I am pretty sure they did not use the word Lord in Hebrew, since that's an English word. The problem is, I think even your audience would assume they were using the word Lord, because most of them probably won't make the connection that you're referring to the word Lord in Hebrew. I wish I could say I was wrong about that, but I've met too many people who do not seem to understand this.
Back from all of this, we have the the name of God, and we suddenly realize that the Torah always points to the name of Jehovah. Now, what's the chance of
And the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy always points to the answer of life, the universe, and everything being 42.
that happening by accident? And by the way, if you've tried to contrive something like this and still maintain logic in the text, that's a challenge. This is a very non-trivial thing to design if you set out to design it that way. So many of us...
Or, hear me out on this, you could just be making this up and it's not really there because most people aren't going to go back and actually check to see if the letters are what you say they are because most of us don't read Hebrew.
Tend to regard these kinds of things in general as fingerprints of the Holy Spirit.
Dr. Bracken just proved by using...
Wait, most of us tend to regard these things as fingerprints of the Holy Spirit? No, most of us tend to regard these things as numbers game that people who are into religion and also have an intellectual and mathematical bent like to play. Oh, and I see he's going to mention Tacitus, one of my favorite Roman historians.
ancient manuscripts that the New Testament has more evidence towards it than other figures in history. Check it out.
How many copies?
The New Testament has more evidence towards it than other figures in history. Well, yes, we know the New Testament exists. We know some of the people mentioned in the New Testament existed. Are you referring to the New Testament, which we all have physical evidence of? Or are you referring to specific figures in the New Testament, possibly Jesus, because that is a different claim?
Of ancient writings do we have? When we talk about somebody like Caesar, the works written about him.
We have plenty of other contemporary sources that mention Caesar, statues, and the man was on coins. This is a non-starter for this argument, and it seems bizarre to even include in this video.
We have over 10. Plato, 7. Thucydides, 8. Tacitus, an impressive 20. Suetonius, 8. Homer.
Did they misspell Suetonius on the screen, or was that just my vision screwing up?
Writer of the Odyssey and Iliad, an astounding 643, and with the New Testament, an unbelievable 24,000.
Where are you getting that number? And secondly, it's the New Testament. You're comparing two different things. The fact that various books existed is not in question. We're not even questioning that the letters of the New Testament existed at the time people think they were written. There's good evidence that they were. But why are you comparing the books of the New Testament to various historical figures? They are not the same thing. Or are you actually referring to the text these people wrote and just using their names?
Plus, why does that matter? Well, because the truth is, we're not exactly sure that what we have with Plato is accurate, but we have a really good idea that the New Testament we have is the one that was intended for us.
The other lines of argument that you talk about in your...
I think I could have done a more coherent job of stringing clips together by just picking random clips, putting them on the dartboard, and picking the ones that the darts landed on. So far, none of these clips, except for one, have had anything to do with your point.
book is the argument of DNA. And I think years ago I had asked you, what...
Oh, goody. This is one of my favorite arguments.
What's an argument that you just find so compelling? And you said DNA, and I think you described it. I live here in California, and on the beach, you can find ripples in the sand created by the water, patterns that could happen by seemingly random movement of the water.
So that means patterns can happen by random chance.
But if you looked into that sand you told me, and I saw John loves Sally forever with a big heart around it, you'd say, now, That's different.
Right.
Because that contains information.
Exactly.
That's not pattern.
Again, how are you defining information? This is something where creationists typically refuse to define information, and when they do use a definition, they don't settle on one. Typically, they mean the definition that informatics uses, where data gets processed into human-readable information. So, under this model, DNA would have to either be able to manipulate data or be Turing complete in order for it to be the programming language they want it to be.
Random movement of the elements. That is communicating a message.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what DNA is. Unpack that
How is DNA communicating a message?
for us.
Yeah, you have 100 trillion cells in your body. If you were to open any one cell and uncoil the DNA, it would be 6 feet tall.
Again, that's not really surprising.
Embedded in that DNA is a 6-letter or 4-letter chemical alphabet that spells out the
Yes, because we all know that 4 and 6 are the same thing.
precise assembly instructions for every protein out of which you're made. So
Precise assembly instructions for every protein out of which you're made? I don't think DNA is as precise as you seem to think it is.
in other words, just as English uses a 26-letter alphabet to spell out words, DNA uses a 4-letter chemical alphabet.
No, DNA uses chemical bonds in order to get chemicals to interact. It's not an alphabet. What you're doing here is you're basically using a human abstraction as an analogy for the way to describe DNA works.
To spell out the assembly instructions for all that you're made of. That is information. And whenever we see information.
No, again, what it is in this particular analogy, since you're using an informatics analogy again, is that DNA is data. Data will not become information in this case until the gene is expressed.
Whether it's a computer code, whether it's a painting on a cave wall, whether it's a newspaper article, always, always, always there's an intelligent.
And by computer code, you mean something like ASCII, Unicode, or a Python program. That's another annoying thing about the people who use this argument. They don't specify what type of code they mean either, because like earlier when they were using the God of the Gaps argument from ignorance fallacy, what they're doing here is an equivocation fallacy.
Behind it. And so I think that is a powerful argument for God. There is more information in every cell in your body than you would find in 200 years of the Sunday New York Times.
I don't know if that's the same on the New York Times or not, but the amount of information in DNA is no longer impressive. The human genome can fit on one CD-ROM. It's about 720 megabytes or less. What happened to my sound? Looks like my sound's off. Give me a second here. This has happened before. Usually it just needs to be.
If somebody wanted to do an investigation into Christianity, where would you start?
If there was one more thing I was hoping for in this 10-minute clip, it's another clip on a movie that has nothing to do with the topic you're talking about. This looks like an ad for God's Not Dead, to be honest.
If the resurrection of Jesus didn't happen, it's a house of cards.
You sure you want to give me that loaded gun?
And what does the resurrection of Jesus have to do with DNA being a code? Seriously, I think someone forgot to edit the ads out of this clip.
I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to pull the trigger.
Oh, it's an ad for PureFlix. Not interested, thanks.
I've spent my entire career as a journalist uncovering the truth until the day my wife presented me.
I am really not interested in any autobiographical biopic about Lee Strobel. Thanks, but edit this out next time.
With the biggest story of my life
I'm not gonna lose my wife and my kids to something that I can't even reason with.
And what happened next? Change me forever.
How can we even talk about historical evidence for the resurrection?
The Gospels are filled with contradictions.
The empty tomb is based on evidence. And isn't evidence your trade?
We all bet our lives on something.
The question is, what's it going to be?
As much as I would like to help out a fellow skeptic, what you're proposing is impossible.
Could Jesus survive being spiked?
I really don't care about Lee Strobel's life story.
The cross.
There is no evidence of anyone ever surviving a full Roman crucifixion.
Just because I write something down and I bury it in the dirt, that doesn't make it true.
What I felt was something more real than anything I've ever felt in my life.
I'm praying for you.
Do you really want to know the truth, or is your mind already made up? Stop blaming me and the church and God and do your job.
Great, we got 2 minutes of an ad for a Lee Strobel biopic that no one wants to see. Please tell me Kevin Sorbo is at least being given some form of charity work in this movie.
It's never proven if the shroud is the actual burial cloth of the Christ. But whenever someone looks in those eyes for the first time, suddenly becomes a real person.
Wait, you're just going to end this video with an ad? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna stop sharing, but I need to know who did this edit. Give me a second, because I cannot believe that. Okay, so this was on a channel called About Free Trillion. Apparently they did not edit anything out, so we got a bunch of ads that had nothing to do with the topic. I feel a little disappointed because I wanted to hear more about how Kirk Cameron thinks DNA is code and what he meant by that. Unfortunately, that's where the clip ended. So I'm guessing this was probably cobbled together by an AI done by someone just trying to get views. So, well, I guess that's the end of that. Is there anything more I can do tonight? Well, I think the best thing I can do is just end this stream because that was a severe disappointment. All right, everyone. Have a good night. Go out and write some code. Oh, before I leave, one more thing. On Monday at 9 p.m., I'll be doing the special 128 subscriber stream. The next one will be at 256.